Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Made You Book. My name's Gretchen and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I plan on reading in September. Now, I don't typically like to commit to a TBR because I am very much a mood reader, but Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot is kind of chairing this reading challenge to get us reading literature from Australian authors, and it's called Straya September, and there are 4 prompts. So if you're not familiar, if you haven't seen the video, I will link it below. And if you're not following Scott, why? He's hysterical. He always has very insightful reviews about the books. And did I mention that he's funny? He just makes me laugh all the time. So aside from that, I really love the idea of having a reading challenge like this. Australian literature is one of those things that I don't really find myself reaching for. And I don't know if it's because I don't feel like Australian literature is marketed very well in the States where I'm from. So I oftentimes don't even realize that I'm reading a book by an Australian author. And I think that that's a shame. I really like to read around the world. For those of you that know me from seeing other videos, I'm a huge fan of reading around the world and translated fiction, but I often don't find myself reading Australian books, and I don't know why. The ones that I have read in the past have been fantastic. So I really like the idea of having this prompt to get me more involved in reading some of those books that I may not have otherwise been aware of, or authors that I have never read from before that I have always wanted to. So I'm excited about this. Now, I will say it's going to be a bit of a challenge because I'm still going through the Booker long list. There are still some books that I have yet to read, but I'm trying to be kind to myself, and I do have books for all of the prompts, which we'll talk about, but I'm just going to try to get through as many of these as I can, and if not, I can certainly carry them over into October because they are definitely books that I want to get to. So first and foremost, when it comes to the prompts, there's kind of 2 different directions that you can go. First is no prompts. Basically, just read whatever you want, as long as it is a book by an Australian author. However, I love a good challenge, and nothing is ever good for me if it's done the easy way. So I actually decided to follow the challenge that he dubbed Not Dying in the Desert. And there are 4 prompts for that, and I will walk through each of the prompts and which book I plan on reading for each one of those. So first and foremost, we have the first prompt, which is just to read any book, and he made that very easy. So I am going to go with New Animal by Ella Baxter. Now, this book has been on my TBR for a long time. I got it very shortly after it came out, and it just kind of kept getting put to the wayside, and it's time. I really want to get to this, and I also want to get to it because it was also one of the ones that Scott recommended in another video he did where he mentioned, I think it was like over 30 books by Australian authors that would fit the prompts for this challenge. So I'll link that video below as well. But this one is interesting. It has a very unique plot, and I'm just really curious to see where this goes. So basically, this follows a young woman. She has a really good relationship with her mom. She's also a I think like a makeup artist at a mortuary, and when her mother unexpectedly passes, she's kind of struggling with her grief, and somehow she ends up in the Tasmanian BDSM scene. So I think that I'm really curious to see where that goes and how it leads up to that. I think that I've heard that her writing is very sharp and fierce, and she's a great feminine voice, and also she's Indigenous, which leads me to the next prompt. So this book would also fit the next prompt as well, which is to read a book by an Indigenous author. So New Animal would also count for that. But I also found two other ones at my library, and I'm not sure exactly which one of these I'm going to read. Who knows, if I have time, I might read both, but they both sound very interesting. And what I found fascinating is they come from two different Indigenous tribes, and they kind of seem like they have a very similar storyline, but the way that the author, well, I shouldn't say the way that the author, because I obviously haven't read them yet, but the way that they're presented makes it seem like they are telling the same stories, but in kind of a very different way. So that's intriguing to me, to see the different spins that could be taken on a very similar story, or two stories that have similar themes and messages. So the first one is The Yield by Tara June Winch, and this follows I believe her name is August, and she has moved from her homeland, and she's been living in Europe for a while. And when she learns that her I believe her father has died, she decides that she is going to travel back. And while she's there, she realizes that her homeland and the house that her family resides in is going to be overtaken or destroyed by this mining company that is coming in. So she is trying to save her family's home, and there's a lot of stuff that she's going through, obviously mourning the death of a loved one, her coming to terms with, basically like leaving them and abandoning them to go and live in Europe for so long. And I think that it's just gonna be a really touching, a really poignant story, and I'm looking forward to getting to this one, whether it's this month or whether it's in September or October, I should say, but that is going to be fitting the prompt for Indigenous Australian authors. And then there's another one that I mentioned that is also from a different Indigenous group, and it is Too Much Lip, and this is by Melissa Lukashenko. And this takes basically kind of the same thing that I had said before, but it just mixes it up a little bit. And I'm sure that it presents it in a very different way. So this book is following our protagonist. I'm not sure, I can't remember what her name is. But basically she is like this, she's described as like this wisecracking, smart aleck that just kind of lives by her own rules, and she's dodging prison, and she has also fled her hometown, and she avoids it like the plague. And she learns that not only is she kind of like running from the law, but she also learns that her pop is dying, and she wants to make sure that she gets to visit him one last time. And it also doesn't help that she is set to go to prison soon, and she's basically fleeing the law. So she steals a Harley and she goes back home. When she gets home, she realizes that there is a plan for the land that her family has to be taken over by the government, and a prison to be put on that land. So obviously, her being the criminal that she is, the middle finger to the law kind of girl. The last thing she wants to see happen to her family's land is for there to be a prison there. And she is just, doing whatever she can to prevent that from happening. So 2 different stories with similar plot lines, but presented in, I'm sure, a very different way. But I'm looking forward to reading both of them just to kind of see how they differ and how they are the same. So once again, that is going to be a qualifier for the second prompt, which is Indigenous Australian authors. Now, the third prompt is to read a book from an author that had emigrated to Australia. So I was going through my books, and one thing I didn't mention is that the books that I promised myself that I wasn't going to buy any books for this prompt, so I had to either get them from my personal library or go to my public library to get those books. And luckily, I was able to find one that fit the prompt, and it is Summertime by J.M. Coetzee, or Coetzee. Coetzee is how it's pronounced, I believe. And this one sounds absolutely fascinating to me. So first and foremost, J.M. Coetzee is a South African author, and he, I believe, moved to Australia in, I think it was like the mid 2000s. And he is just like continued to write, and it seems like the Australian the country has just like welcomed him and taken him in, and it seems like he has a very good relationship with the Australian people. So I thought that was good, and I also made sure that because he was a prolific author in South Africa prior to him moving to Australia, that I picked a book that he physically wrote while he was living in Australia. So this is one of his more recent books. There are a couple older books of his that have received a lot of acclaim that I will be reading as part of my personal goal to read all of the shortlisted, or all of the long-listed books, I should say, that have ever been nominated for Booker Prizes. And I'll be getting to those eventually, but this fits the bill too, because this actually won the Booker, or no, this was a finalist. No, it won. I'm pretty sure, no, it didn't. It didn't win. I know Disgrace won. And one of his other ones won as well, but this one was just a finalist. But this book, sorry for rambling, but this particular book sounds so unique, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. So basically, this book follows the story of a biographer, this young biographer, who is writing a biography on the author, John Coetzee. And obviously, the name of our author that wrote the book. So this is very autobiographical. So we have this biographer that is doing all of these interviews with people that the author knows, and he's learning about him. So this is a way for Coetzee to be super critical of himself and to put things out that he is self-aware of on the pages. So it's not, from what I've heard, it's not always painting himself in the most the nicest light. So I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what he does with this and how critical of himself he actually is. And also just to kind of learn, although it is a work of fiction, there's going to be a lot of things in this book that are true. So it'll be interesting to read. And another plus is it is a short one, so I should be able to get through this one pretty quickly because I do have a lot of books to read in September. So summertime, and that'll also knock off one of my books for the Booker longlisted one. So win-win. And finally, the final prompt is to read a book from an author that is in or from a different state from any of the previous books that you have selected or authors that you have previously selected. So Too Much Lip, she's from Queensland. The Yield, she's from New South Wales. And Summertime is South Australia, I believe, if that's where Adelaide is. So I decided there was another book that I've really been wanting to get to, and it fit the prompt. So this is going to be The Rain Heron by Robbie Arnott, and Robbie Arnott is from Tasmania. So this definitely fits the prompt, and I am really excited to read something from this author. For any of you that watched any of my prediction videos, I was actually hoping that his most recent book, Limberlost, would have been nominated for the Booker, but for some reason the Australians have not been getting love from the Booker Prize recently. So I figured that one I can't get yet in the States that I'm aware of, but this one was available, so I figured that I would go ahead and start here. This one sounds really interesting to me as well. It sounds like it is more fantastical, more mythical, and I'm really interested to kind of see how that type of book or that type of genre plays out in or from an Australian author. So this story follows a woman by the name of Wren. She lives in the mountains. She was, I think, kind of forced into the mountains after there was some type of military coup d'etat, and she ended up being moved up into the mountains. She's very self-sustaining. She's learned how to do all of this stuff on her own, hunting, fishing, gathering, all of those things to survive. And then one day, she runs into somebody from an army unit that is in the area, this woman, and they are looking for a legendary creature called the Rain Heron. And then basically this just goes into the story of them looking for it. Wren insists that it doesn't exist, but they end up going on this quest to find them or find one, and I'm sure that there's just a lot that unfolds from it. So it sounds very interesting to me, and I'm really looking forward to reading something from this author. And as soon as Limberlost is something I can get my hands on, that'll also be something that I put on my TBR to read soon. So I do also have a couple other options if I maybe start to read one of these and I'm not vibing with it. I can't see that happening, but if that's the case, I also have Jasper Jones by Craig Silvey. I think that that's kind of that's like a very, very popular YA novel. And then I also have talking about the Booker, I know that Peter Carey has been nominated several times for Bookers, and I think he's actually potentially maybe even won twice. I think, oh yeah, I think he won for, I think it's Oscar and Lucinda, and oh, what's the other one? The True History of the Kelly Gang, I think, is the second one. So if, once again, none of these work out, I can always maybe swap in a Peter Carey, because I have both of those books as well. So do any of you have plans on participating in Straya September? Was it something that you even knew about? Are there any favorite Australian authors or books that you love? Let me know in the comments. And once again, I'm still chugging through that Booker long list, and I should be coming out with another review video for those soon. And until then, we'll see ya. Bye. Take care.